Potter Day.
Okay, go on.
Harry Potter.
Okay. They are a little wound up. We had a Harry Potter birthday party that we were invited to yesterday, and they are still in Harry Potter mode. So that is what all that's about. If you can understand Austin, he was saying Happy Harry Potter Day because he thinks it's Harry Potter Day since we had a birthday party. So last week we talked about our words and how we need to put salt on them. Today we're going to continue to talk about our words. Today we're going to talk about how our tongues, how our words, how our choices, I guess, could get us into trouble. But then once I talk about getting us in trouble, we're going to give examples of how we can get out of trouble with our words and with our tongues. And there are several examples in the Bible of both situations. And I like starting with the bad stuff. So we're going to start with what gets you in trouble. And then when we end the devotional, we'll end it on a good note about how we can use our words in a positive way. And we're going to be in the book of Proverbs for the first part of this devotional. And if you want to know how we should use our words or how we should not use our words, the book of Proverbs is where you need to go. Over 100 times in the book of Proverbs, the words lips, tongue, and mouth are used. And we know that Solomon wrote this book. He wrote the book of Proverbs. We know that he was the wisest man in the Bible. So for him to mention the use of our words, the use of our lips, the use of our tongue, our mouth, over 100 times, I think that's pretty important. So it must be something that, one, is obviously a problem, and it needs to be addressed over and over and over again, and something we need to be careful of. So I want to start there. We're going to start with, I think there's 5 verses in Proverbs that we're going to look at, that Solomon wrote. We're going to start in Proverbs chapter 10, verses 19. And it says, when words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. Proverbs 13:3, whoever guards his mouth preserves his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. Proverbs 17:27 and 28, whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Proverbs 21:23, whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. These verses show us our words are very important. So they deserve thought before they come out. They deserve to take into consideration how they're going to be spoken, how they're going to come across, if they're going to help or if they're going to hurt. And just like last week, talked about we need to keep our words salty, we shouldn't just casually toss around our words. They're things that are very important, and we all know that in the book of James, it tells us the tongue is the most powerful. It can start forest fires, and it's the hardest one to control. The littlest part of our body, but it's the hardest one to control. So we have to watch what we say in our words. So now we're going to go to the Bible, and I've got 6 examples. They all revolve around lies, and we're going to see where people's tongues got them into trouble, brought trouble upon themselves, or brought trouble to other people. And it's all because of their words, things they said. And we're going to start off with number 1 being Satan in the story of Adam and Eve. Due to Satan's lies, Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden. And we can read this story in Genesis 3. We know you can say, tricked them into eating of the one tree that they were not supposed to eat of. He lied to them, saying that what God told them was not going to be true. It wouldn't come to fruition. It wouldn't happen. And we all know that it did. And because of that lie, because of Satan's words, because of Satan's tongue, because of Satan's choosing, because he is evil, he caused them to be cast out of the garden. Second one we're going to talk about is Abraham. And we're going to talk about the scenario in Genesis 12:10 through 20, where he lied about Sarah being his wife. And it about cost him. When we read this story, we know that with him lying, saying Sarah was his sister instead of his wife, it almost resulted in her becoming Abimelech, King Gerar's wife. And it created a big old mess. Again, why? Because Abraham lied. Abraham didn't want to get in trouble. Abraham was scared. He lied. Didn't bring any good to him. Then we're going to look at, thirdly, Jacob. We see in Genesis 27, we know the famous story between the twin brothers. Jacob told a deceitful lie and stole the blessing from his brother Esau. We know because of jealousy. Jealousy made him lie, wanted him to take something that wasn't his. Then it goes on down. Jacob's sons caused undue grief to their father when they told their father that Joseph was killed by a wild beast. And we see that in Genesis 37, 12 through 36. Again, lies. What did the lie do? It brought undue grief to someone that they loved. They had to lie. It did not bring around good things. Next, we're going to talk about Achan. And he lied about what he stole from Jericho. And what was his result? Execution, because of his disobedience to God's command. And we can read that in Joshua 7:8. So he lied. Again, his choice of words, his tongue was not a good choice. And his result was death. Lastly, we're going to talk about another one that I think pretty much everybody knows. And it's in Acts 5, 1 through 11. And that is Ananias and Sapphira. And we all know that they lied about the gift of money to the church. And what happened? They were struck dead right then and there. So their tongue. Now, all of these 6 examples are about lying. And we also know that our words can hurt, our words can deceive, our words can lead others astray when we don't necessarily have to lie to them. But these are the 6 examples that I chose. And it just happened to be that it was about lying. But as we can see in all 6 of these, the result was death or being hurt. And we can see when Satan lied, when he did his choice of words, it didn't hurt him. It hurt Adam and Eve. It got them in trouble. When Abraham lied about Sarah, it did kind of hurt him. That came back and backfired on him. When Jacob told the lie, he got Esau in trouble. But it created a rift between him and Esau and him and the family. So it came back on him. Jacob's sons, when they caused undue grief to their father, their words hurt somebody else. Achan hurt himself. He died. When he lied about how much he stole from Jericho, he was dead. Ananias and Sapphira, they hurt themselves by lying. They were struck dead. So we can see, hopefully, out of these 6 examples, don't lie. Nothing good comes from lying. And as Christians, we need to be careful not to be a liar. So I told you those are going to be the bad things. So now we got all the bad out of the way. We know that nothing good comes from being lying. But let's look at our words. Let's think about our salty words from last week. And let's look how our words can be used for good. And again, we're going to go to the Bible for this. And we're going to start in Matthew. Matthew 5, 23 to 24 tells us that if we know someone has a grudge with us, we need to go and try to clear it up. It doesn't say goes and cause a fight. It doesn't say go and get even with them. We're supposed to go and clear it up. Figure it out peacefully, calmly. Use your words. When we know somebody has a problem with us. That's one way of our words being used for good. You want to make peace. Exodus 23, 1 through 3, and then 6 through 7 tells us that we must tell the truth when in court or giving legal testimony. And I think this applies to everyday life. We must always tell the truth, and if we do not, we have to you get into this web of lies. And everybody, I'm sure, has told a lie before. We're all human. And you all have probably all been in a situation where you tell one lie, and then it might be a week later, it comes up again. You got to think about, okay, well, I told this way. I've got to make sure I tell this other person the exact same thing, but I can't remember what I told person A. So if I tell person B something different, and you start having to keep track of what you told to this person, what you told that person, and what happens? You just make a lie after lie after lie, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it's all blown out of proportion. But when you use your words for good, when you tell your truth, when it says in Exodus 23 that we must tell the truth, I'm going to put in there daily. We don't have to worry about the lies. We don't have to worry about, well, what did I tell so-and-so? And did I tell them this part or not tell them this part? Or did I exaggerate this part a little bit? You don't have to worry about any of that. If you just tell the truth, you have nothing to worry about. In Leviticus 5:1, it tells us that if someone is being falsely accused, I need to stand up for them. Not my neighbor, not my spouse, not the person at the grocery store, but I need to stand up for them. We need to be there for those people and make sure they are not punished for something they did not do. As Christians, we have a responsibility for that. Now, I know it's a different situation today. A lot of people don't want to get involved. But I think this is more personal too. I go back to the workplace. With me working at a bank, obviously we were around money a lot. We never had a situation in our branch where where anybody was falsely accused of anything, but we have heard stories. There are some people that I know that work in banks today, and it's not just banks, it's Walmart, it's grocery stores, it's restaurants. When Matt and I, we were married, but we went to an Alabama football game, and we went to Applebee's after the game. We were hungry, it's very late, probably 10 o'clock at night, and we paid with our debit card. We get to the car, and my debit card, I looked at Matt and I said, "Where's our card?" And he said, "The lady never get back to us." And buddy, I beelined it in there, and I was ready to falsely accuse her for stealing my card. It wasn't on the table. It wasn't at the credit card station. I couldn't find my waitress, and I was getting pretty mad. And so I went and found another waiter, and I asked him, and he says, "Oh yeah, she turned it in. She said she forgot to give it back to you. It's sitting right here by my station." And everything was fine. We said no problem, and I watched my bank account for the next couple of weeks. Nothing ever came of it. She was legit, but I was ready to falsely accuse her. I was already falsely accusing her of, why didn't she give me my card back? She brought me my receipt, but she didn't bring me my card. But my point being, back in the workplace, one of our rules, I guess, when I got hired, is if you know, and again, I'm using the bank because that's where I worked. If we know of someone who is stealing money, who is doing something wrong, we are supposed to go tell our boss. Now that sounds easy. That sounds like, oh, okay, no big deal. But when it happens, it's a big deal. Because that person knows you're the one that's telling on them. It puts you in a situation. It's a big old mess. But that is what we are called to do as Christians. And now I'm not saying that if we go to Walmart and we see something we disagree with, that we need to go up to somebody and say, "Hey, you don't need to be doing that." That brings up it reminds me of the whole spanking in public situation. A lot of people get offended if you give your child a spanking in public. It's caused a lot of issues. So I'm not saying if I'm spanking my child that someone needs to come up to me and take my child away from me and say I'm abusing them. I'm not saying step up like that. I think you all get what I'm saying. But let's bring it home to church. Let's bring it home to a church situation. What if someone is being falsely accused of something in the church? Are we just supposed to throw our hands up and go, "Oh, well, my kid's not in that class, so it don't bother me"? Or, "Oh, I wasn't there that Sunday, so I don't have any say-so in it, but I know he's done it in the past, or she's done it in the past, or they're known for this, but I just don't want to get involved"? No, we are supposed to stand up for someone who is being falsely accused. Ecclesiastes 3:7, it tells us that there is a time for silence and a time for speech. Think about that. A time for silence and a time for speech. And the way I was raised growing up, being told there's a time to speak up and a time to shut up. And do we know when to use each? Do we know the time to be quiet? And do we know the time to speak up? Abigail knew when to use her speech, didn't she? She knew her husband Nabal had done David wrongly, and she knew David was coming to kill him. He was coming to get revenge, and she also knew that she was the one who had to solve the situation. So what did she use? Did she go back at him and fight him? No, she used her words. She talked to him. She did bring food, she did bring kindness, but she came calmly with a cool head, calmed David down, changed David's mind, ultimately saved her life. And we know when Nabal died that she became David's wife. So we can find all this in 1 Samuel 25, 23 through 34. But her words, a soft-spoken word. You know David was a hothead at this point. He was coming for revenge. He was ready to kill. Think of the words that she had to carefully use to diffuse the situation. Could we have done that? Are we an Abigail? Can we diffuse the situation? Let's look at Jonah. He used his words to change the people's hearts in Nineveh so that they could be saved. And we see that in Jonah 3, verses 3 through 10. How did he save them? He talked to them. Did he go in there and beat them over the head and yell at them? No, he talked to them. He told them the truth, and they, in turn, were saved. They believed, and they were saved. Nebuchadnezzar, he commanded all the wise people be put to death. Well, Daniel, with his words, prevented the death of his friends. How did he do that? He went to the king's guard Arioch, and we see this in Daniel 2:14. With his words, he saved his friends. Not his weapons, not his force, not his power, but his words. Peter, Paul, and Philip, and all the other apostles, how did they spread the gospel? They used their words. They used their lips. Were they able to spread it by being ugly? No. What is it called? Spreading the good news. Happy news. Was it easy? Of course not. They faced discouragement. They faced persecution. But they still chose wisely their words to tell people about Jesus. These are the good examples that show what our words could do. So this week we have a choice. Are we going to use our words for good, like Abigail, Jonah, Daniel, Peter, Paul, Philip? Are we going to use them for good? Or are we going to use our words for bad, like Satan, Abraham, Jacob's sons, Achan, Ananias, and Sapphira? Now, I'm not saying all these people were bad. They made mistakes. They're human. But what did their mistake, their lies, cost them? It cost them, some of them lost their life, them caused a rift. Lying does not make a happy ending. So we have to think about and choose our words wisely, just like we talked about our salty words last week. Choose our words. Like we started this devotional, think before you speak. Think about your words. And that's what I want us to do this week, is just think, are we going to use our words for good, or are we going to use our words for bad? I hope you all have a great week. Thanks again for listening. I will see you all here next week.